Chapter 2, Section 2, Global Patterns of Suppression and Control. In recent years, private discourse surrounding Sharia has become increasingly critical as non-Muslims around the world experience the impacts of Sharia-based actions firsthand. Islamic doctrine, cited as justification for punitive and restrictive measures, plays a central role in both Islamic and non-Islamic states. Below are 11 examples showing how Sharia law is enforced against Muslims and non-Muslims, with Islamic doctrine guiding both policy and behavior globally. 1. Faith by force. In the Halali Khan translation of the Quran, footnote 2a to verse 2.3 explains that Islamic prayer is not merely a personal duty, but a communal obligation enforced through hierarchical authority. It states, quote, "The chief of a family, town, tribe, etc., and the Muslim rulers of a country are held responsible before Allah in case of non-fulfillment of this obligation by the Muslims under their authority." Islam supports a rigid system of religious enforcement. Even a family head is accountable for the prayers of others. Sharia obliges the witnessing of non-compliance to be met with corrective action, often labeled as defensive, but in practice frequently offensive. Quote, "He who amongst you sees something abominable should modify it with the help of his hand. And if he has not strength enough to do it, then he should do it with his tongue. And if he has not strength enough to do it, then he should abhor it from his heart, and that is the least of faith." Muslim 49a. Substantial ta'zir punishments may be imposed under Sharia for missing Friday prayers or violating Ramadan observance. Women are subject to different expectations. As detailed in foot 2b of the same verse, a woman is encouraged to offer prayers at home and not in the mosque. They are also frequently prevented from attending their husband's funeral or even visiting his grave. Quote, "Indeed, the Messenger of Allah cursed the women who visit the graves." Tirmidhi 1056. This reinforces Islamic segregation, where women's public presence is restricted and male authority figures are charged with ensuring both compliance and containment. Islam does not center on personal conscience, but requires public conformity and hierarchical enforcement. 2. Blasphemy laws. Nigeria. Deborah Emanuel Yakubu, a Christian college student, was lynched by fellow students in Sokoto, Nigeria in May 2022 after allegedly posting a blasphemous comment in a WhatsApp group. She was stoned and burned to death. The attackers filmed the killing, chanting Islamic slogans. No one was convicted. Quran 33:57 states, "Indeed, those who abuse Allah and his messenger, Allah has cursed them in this world and the hereafter, prepared for them a humiliating punishment." Quran 5:51. Do not take the Jews and Christians as allies. This justifies the separation and disdain for non-Muslims. 3. Forced conversions in Egypt. In Egypt, forced conversions of Christian women remains a serious problem. In January of 2024, Irene Ibrahim Shahada, a young Christian student, was allegedly kidnapped and forced to convert to Islam. Her family states authorities were complicit in her abduction. Sharia encourages the spread of Islam and grants protection to converts. This incident, one of many, reflects the view that forced conversion can be justified as a religious duty to save or rescue the abducted from the terrible fate that Kafirs deserve. This is supported by Quran 9:29, which directs Muslims to fight those who do not accept Islam until they pay the jizya, a tax, in acknowledgement of Islamic rule. Ibn Kathir's tafsir on 9:29 interprets this command as requiring the humiliation of non-Muslims under Islamic governance. He writes, "Paying jizya is a sign of kufr and disgrace," Allah said, "if they do not choose to embrace Islam with willing submission in defeat and subservience and feel themselves subdued, disgraced, humiliated, and belittled." 4. Church demolitions in Indonesia. In Indonesia, the world's largest Muslim-majority country, non-Muslim places of worship frequently face official rejection under Sharia-aligned building codes. Consistent with Islamic Sharia that forbids Kafirs building new churches, a Catholic congregation in Bulakumba Regency, South Sulawesi, waited 45 years for a building permit, only to be denied again in May of 2025. As a result, they are forced to worship in empty homes and warehouses. There are frequent attacks on churches and congregations, resulting in deaths, and in West Java, all 29 of its churches have been shut down. Such regulatory discrimination reflects a broader doctrine that limits the presence of non-Muslim institutions in Islamic territories. Quran 9:28 describes non-Muslims as unclean, establishing a religious basis for their exclusion from public life and institutional legitimacy. 5. Persecution of Baha'i in Iran. The Baha'i community in Iran continues to suffer persecution under Sharia law, which does not recognize the Baha'i faith as legitimate. Throughout 2024, reports document the arrest of Baha'i believers and the confiscation of their property. Under Islamic law, Baha'i are classified as apostates because they deny the finality of Muhammad. According to Bukhari 69:22, quote, "Whoever changes his Islamic religion, then kill him," a ruling often cited to justify violence against Baha'i and other non-conforming sects. 6. Restrictions on Hindu festivals in Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, tensions between the Muslim majority and Hindu minority frequently escalate. In October of 2024, Hindu festivals were disrupted by Islamic groups, resulting in violent clashes and property damage. When concerns are raised, authorities often downplay the events or deny religious motivation altogether. Islamic doctrine repeatedly instructs Muslims not to ally with non-believers. This has been interpreted by some as justification for suppressing public expressions of non-Muslim faith, including through intimidation and violence. Quran 3:28, "Let not believers take disbelievers as allies rather than believers. And whoever of you does that has nothing with Allah except when taking precaution against them in prudence." Ibn Kathir's tafsir of this verse affirms the doctrine of taqiyya, deception, and permits Muslims to conceal their disavowal of disbelievers if they fear harm. He writes, quote, "Taqiyya is allowed until the day of resurrection," adding, "We smile in the face of some people while our hearts curse them," quoting Bukhari in support. This verse and Ibn Kathir's interpretation provide cover for denying the religious motives behind acts of suppression. It is not just the persecution that is doctrinal, the denial is too. 7. Attacks on Yazidis in Iraq. Yazidi communities in northern Iraq continue to face violent persecution by Islamic groups seeking to impose Sharia. Since 2014, thousands have been killed, raped, abducted, and sold into slavery. These actions are doctrinally justified through verses such as Quran 9:5. Then, when the sacred months have passed, kill the polytheists wherever you find them. They are also reinforced by Quran 4:24, which legitimizes the enslavement and sexual use of captive women. Quote, "And forbidden to you are married women except those your right hands possess. Those are slaves." This verse has been cited to justify the systematic enslavement of Yazidi and Christian women and girls, over 6,000 of whom were taken, raped, and trafficked under this doctrine. Yazidis are frequently labeled as polytheists or devil worshippers, a classification that removes any expectation or tolerance or protection. Forced conversions, enslavement, and execution are presented as lawful outcomes. What the West views as genocide, Islamic doctrine presents as obedience. 8. Islamic norms enforced through intimidation and institutional complicity in Europe. In Germany, Muslim student events at major universities require men and women to sit separately, with one featuring influencer Sertak Odabas, who promotes death for apostates and hatred of Christians. While calls grow for Islamic religious education, a primary school teacher was bullied into collapse by Muslim pupils shouting, "Islam is the boss here," after revealing he was gay. Non-Islamic students face harassment for ignoring Islamic dress codes, while high school events propose Sharia-based segregation, including single-sex graduation balls. In some districts, 98% of students are migrants who neither hear nor speak German, while Islam is asserted aggressively in classrooms. Authorities recorded 35,570 violent school incidents in 2024, averaging 97 daily, 743 involving knives. French suburbs show similar patterns, with Islam dominating parts of the Benelux, enabled by political silence. Quran 3:110 declares Muslims the best of peoples for commanding right and forbidding wrong, Sharia. Muslim 2167a, do not greet the Jews and Christians before they greet you, and when you meet any one of them on the road, force him to go to the narrowest part of it. Reliance of the traveler, Sharia M23, requires gender segregation during group prayer and in social situations, and P17.2, homosexuality is an enormity against Allah, and they may be killed. 9. Sexual assaults in Europe linked to non-adherence to Islamic dress codes. In 2016, during New Year's Eve celebrations in Cologne, Germany, over 1,000 women were reported sexual assaults by groups of men, many identified as migrants from Muslim-majority countries. Some perpetrators justified their actions by claiming that women dressed in Western attire were inviting such behavior. Grooming gangs in the UK have targeted young white girls for more than 2 decades, including the widely reported cases in Rotherham and Rochdale, where abuse persisted for over 15 years in each town. And in some cases, Muslim police officers were themselves among the perpetrators. This aligns with Islamic teachings that demand modesty for women and describe unbelievers as livestock, Quran 7:179, and even worse than cattle, Quran 25:44. Quran 33:59. O Prophet, tell your wives and your daughters and the women of the believers to bring down over themselves part of their outer garments. That is more suitable that they will be known and not abused. But of course, this also means that unveiled women will be known and abused. 10. Suppression of Sikh and Hindu practices in Afghanistan. The Indian community in Afghanistan has also been targeted under enforced Sharia. In early 2024, authorities closed the Gurdwaras and restricted Sikh and Hindu practice. Sharia considers Islam as the only acceptable faith, aligning with Quran 9:33, which mandates Islam's supremacy over other religions. This has led to the systemic suppression of Indian and other non-Islamic religious practices in Afghanistan. The last Jew fled in 2021. Quran 9:33. It is he who has sent his messenger with guidance and the religion of truth to manifest it over all religion, although they who associate others with Allah dislike it. Reliance of the Traveler, O 25:3, lists non-Muslim inferiority under Islamic rule, including their exclusion from authority. Religious massacres in Syria, 2025. In 2025, Syria witnessed a series of religiously motivated massacres targeting Druze, Alawite, and Christian civilians and their children. An estimated 10,000 deaths in only 8 months. In Suida province, attackers filmed executions after confirming the victims were not Muslim. In coastal regions, more than 1,400 Alawites were killed in coordinated assaults that included looting and mass execution. Christian minorities were also among those targeted. The killings followed a consistent pattern in which religious identity determined who lived and who died. Global patterns, local consequences. Wherever it goes, Islam carries with it a system of law, governance, taxation, and enforcement, including imams, mullahs, and jihadis, steeped in the belief that it is not only superior, but divinely mandated to replace the law and society of the host. Hardly multicultural. These 11 examples reveal how Sharia imposes not only parallel legal systems, but also profound hardship on minorities and defenseless individuals, both in Islamic and non-Islamic states. From violent attacks to systemic discrimination, Islamic doctrine continues to shape a civilizational agenda that is incompatible with the principles of pluralism, tolerance, and equality. Human rights under Sharia diverge sharply from those enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a conflict that, despite escalating warning signs, remains largely unacknowledged and unaddressed by Western governments and institutions, while the vulnerable bear the cost. And increasingly, these doctrines are not just enforced by authorities, individuals, or mobs, but embedded in property law and protected infrastructure.